Oh, copyright strike.
There it goes.
Yeah. Where was that music?
It turned up. It turned up in the opening credits and the closing seconds.
I mean, the opening credits one felt sort of like an obligatory, like we have to put
this has to be here, yeah.
I did like its use at the end, but I suspect we'll get into that a little later. Why are we here, and who are we?
Well, last time I checked, I'm Patrick, and from what I've been told, you're Eric.
That sounds familiar. Let's roll with that.
We'll keep going with that. And we are here because, see, every now and then, Eric and I get the idea in our heads to start a movie talk podcast. And we record episodes for it. And the first one we did was for the 1998-ish Lost in Space movie. Rest in peace, William Hurt.
Come home to me, Professor.
I love you, wife.
Hollywood is worse off without you. And then after that, we did Transformers 3, a movie we both grew up with. After that, we did Transformers 1986. And in the intro for that, we said, all right, next, we've done a movie about aliens and a movie about robots. Now a movie about robots and aliens in space. Next time, we have to do something completely different. We have to do like Terms of Endearment or whatever.
Ha, ha, ha. Loophole. We said a movie. This is a TV show.
Fuck, you're right. Oh, this is completely above board.
Technically, it doesn't count.
Fuck.
We're okay.
That's true. We're above board. We have not broken our promise.
Someday we may still talk about a real movie, but that day is not today.
It's not
we
today,
have to talk about the brand new Halo television series for Paramount Plus. Can you really call it? I guess you still watch it on television, but I was going to question.
I watched it on, I guess, a web series. Web series.
I watched it on a computer monitor, technically. So
because web series used to be like a kind of demeaning term. It used to mean like YouTube shorts or whatever that were loosely connected. But now it's like Netflix is all web series.
When I think web series, I still think of like Red versus Blue.
Yeah, that's where the origin of the term was. But like, wow, what a full circle. It started with Red versus Blue. Now Halo's a web series.
They're showing web stuff in a theater. Aren't you supposed to steal stuff from movie theaters and then put it on the internet? They've got it backwards.
It's bizarre, but let's get into the show itself.
Right. Now, live action Halo content has been it's been bouncing around development hell for like almost 20 years.
Right. Yeah. Is Steven Spielberg, is he still attached to this? Or is this
if anything, he might. Oh, yes, it is, because Amblin Pictures is producing.
Okay.
It. So he's like I don't know how involved he is. I'm sure he's like a executive producer. Like he's lending his little bit of money, maybe a name, but I don't think he's remotely involved, like creatively.
There has been attempts at bringing Halo to live action before. There was the Neil Blomkamp attempt in like 2009.
It became Elysium, which came out in 2010-ish, I think.
Well, yeah, and then District 9 came first.
Oh, that's what it was. I had it back. District 9, and when District 9 came first, and I think that was originally supposed to be a Halo tie-in.
I think so. Yeah, I think
and then that just folded into its own thing.
Yeah, I think Halo originally fell apart because it was being financed by like two different studios,
and one of them like folded or whatever.
One of them pulled out, and the other one was like, "I'm not paying for all this," and so it just fell apart.
Cost is actually something I would like to bring up. I'm not aware of what the cost is, but like Halo. Yeah, that's it. Halo by necessity is an extremely exorbitantly expensive property to even think about in live action, because so much of it, not just because like your main character is 7 feet tall, not in his super suit. Right. Like in the armor, canonically, I think the Master Chief is around like 8 or 9 feet tall, and he's like almost 2 or 3 feet shoulder to shoulder, and like he fights an enemy that is like pretty exclusively CGI, or would have to be, because you can't really do the Covenant as puppets, because they would look it would be kind of Jim Henson-y. They would look a little too awkward.
I think maybe you can get away with it with the grunts.
The grunts, okay, it would be cute for the grunts. It'd be funny. Or like maybe with some if you have like an extreme close-up on like an elite's face, you could articulate that puppet.
The engineers.
The engineers would be cute because they're supposed to be cute.
They can be they can be physical, I think.
Sure, but then only in very close.
But yeah, shots. Jackals, elites, brutes.
I mean, brutes are just too big to be men in suits.
Although they they did build a brute for that ODST
for that ODST ad, but again, it's like you see it from a distance when it's doing a simple arm movement, and then a quick insert of its face is it's like its mouth is fixed, it's already open, and it just opens a little bit more. And like they were smart to use it very carefully in that trailer. But I get the sense that might not have been feasible for a longer production, because then you have to like, again, you probably also have to pay a bunch of union people to like operate the puppet.
Right. I'm sure it's at the end of the day, it's just easier to do CGI.
Yeah. So I always thought the cost would be an inhibition for a Halo show or a movie, but now it's a show. Well, let's get into the pilot, because we watched the pilot, and that's what this is a review for.
Your rage blinds you.
One of the first things that kind of jumped out at me is that I think the pilot I like the opening. I think the opening is actually pretty interesting. I like that we're opening with the insurrection, because in the books, well, in the games, they're not even present at all, except in Halo Wars very briefly. In the books, there's like this whole situation where like the UNSC is like the dominant power. It has a bunch of colonies, and it's the government of Earth across a bunch of different colony planets, right? And in the books, we're never really given solid reasoning why there's a resistance movement or an insurrection movement that they're having a civil war with. It's something about, I think the UNSC is like exerting too much control or whatever. They don't really go into it in the books. In the show, they kind of take a shot at it, with like the UNSC being depicted as like a colonizing power. Right. And this has drawn a little bit of criticism from like mostly comment sections, where they say like this is a stupid conflict they added to the show for artificial drama. Technically, that's not true. That is an existing lore within the story. But the UNSC in the show is not depicted very heroically, and I'm not mad at that at all.
I actually like that.
That's what I mean, yeah. And like you're kind of on the side of the insurrection right at first, because they're just trying to like live their lives and just kind of squeak by. And then this encampment of insurrectionists just gets demolished by a Covenant invasion force. Or not even an invasion force, they're like an excavation team that the people discover by accident. And I'm sure the Covenant are like, well, we gotta clean this up.
Yeah, it was interesting watching them wiping out. It was not what we are used to seeing in like full planetary invasions described in the books, with like
we hear descriptions in the books. We never see it in the games.
The glassing of planets, where if the Covenant at any point start to lose the ground battle, they just retreat back into their capital ships in space and just bombard the surface of the planet with their plasma cannons, stream,
and they literally burn it to glass.
Yeah, they burn the planet to glass, which is pretty horrifying.
It's pretty horrific, yeah. And it's like that's a consistent piece of lore through all media, is that's the Covenant's thing. They glass planets, and that's part of the reason we're losing so poorly. But in this opening of the show, first of all, I just have some questions with how this show kind of sets itself up. You know what I mean? Because like, so these insurrectionists, they do not know that the Human Covenant War is going on. They don't even know they don't even think the Covenant's real.
Yeah, so
that's weird. The war's been going on for like 28 years at this point. Canonically, this could be different for the show.
I think it cannot be 28 years for the show. Like there's just no way,
been, right? They would know.
Yeah. So it must have been less. But the Admiral lady, I don't remember her name, but the one who talks to Halsey lady, she says that they've been at war with the Covenant for a couple of years, I think.
Indeterminate. For years now, she says. It's indeterminate, but it couldn't have been.
It can't. Yeah, if they don't know about it, it's only been a couple, like 2-3 years tops. You know.
Yeah, they've like heard of it and they dismissed it as propaganda, which like I don't know how I felt about that piece of dialogue, that piece of like little world building. I don't know. It felt really. Again, maybe it's a growing pain, because we're like you and I know the lore of this universe so well that we're gonna have to like adjust. But like, then like when the Covenant do show up at this place, like. The setup has me confused. Where first of all, like, the capital ship is not in orbit. It's not hanging in low orbit like Covenant ships do when they're looking for something, in the games at least. So, because it's a sneak attack basically, or these humans don't know that the Covenant are here, and they only send. It seems like they only send one Phantom which is just a small
Phantom and a Banshee.
And one Banshee, which is like a small troop carrier. You know what I mean? It's not really like they say it's a Covenant ship. I don't consider a Phantom to be a ship. It's like a drop vehicle.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's an
aircraft, I guess.
It's a craft that's capable of space flight. I don't think it can go into, was it called slip space or whatever?
Yes, Phantoms and Pelicans cannot go into slip space.
Slip space is kind of like the Halo equivalent of hyperdrive or warp, or that.
Yeah, in Halo, it's like they kind of do both, where like you do have to go into cryostasis for some reason, but then your ship like opens a tiny little portal that just moves you across space.
It's how they travel fast across the galaxy.
They don't actually address that in the show. Are we meant to imply that the Chief takes that ship from Madrigal to Reach?
That would be quite the journey. And
yeah, if that ship has a slip space drive, I guess that's fine.
It must. Also, can we talk about how big the interior of that Pelican was?
Oh my God! It was like we were on the fucking Enterprise. It was because Pelicans in the. I mean, again, this is a game thing. Pelicans have like the back bay where the troops sit and the cockpit. That's it.
This one had like 2 stories.
Tiny. Yeah, it had like an upper level with. Okay, then in theory, it does actually make more sense that they're a little bit bigger because they have like storage for like foodstuffs or whatever. And I'm guessing that wasn't a brig because it wasn't like I mean, the door is locked on that one insurrection girl, Quan, that they pick up. I'm assuming it's not an official brig. It's just like the Chief kind of just locked her in the room.
Yeah, I think he's just making do with the rooms they had.
Yeah, the interior of that. I mean, you know what? The show might have cucked us on this one because that's not a Pelican, that's a Condor.
Oh.
And Condors, I do believe they are canon in the books. They're larger troop transports.
I think they're in the Halo Wars games.
Oh, they might be. Okay, you might be right.
Yeah, you're right. That's ringing a bell now.
Fuck, they got us.
Damn it.
Anyway, so in this opening sequence, I actually think the opening is quite strong in almost like a Star Wars kind of way, where you just like the rebel forces getting massacred by the Empire, where like these kind of ragtag insurrectionists, or more rebels, I guess, as they're depicted in this show, they are set upon by this Covenant force that seems a lot larger than just one Phantom. But it's all elites, which I thought was a bit odd. You wouldn't start with grunts. I wish that it had been that or brutes or a mixture of like grunts, jackals, and I wish they had saved elites. That too, and also, well, technically I get why they would hold off on the brutes, because if this show is going off of general game lore, for people who don't know, the top of the warrior caste of the Covenant are these creatures called the elites. Then there's like the foot soldiers and cannon fodder are called grunts. There's snipers, are these vulture bird things called jackals, and then there are these other races called brutes that are these big, muscular, vicious, kind of bear apes. Think like Chewbacca on steroids. Yeah, and is shaved usually. And historically, one of the most famous blood feuds in the entire series is that the elites and the brutes do not like each other. So throughout most of the Human Covenant War, the brutes are not seen very often because the elites don't like giving them jobs, basically, which honestly is really fucked up on the part of the elites. But so I could see why they wouldn't, if they're going on game logic, I can see why they wouldn't use the brutes, because the elites probably wouldn't trust them with a recovery mission because they think they're all stupid. I also wish, though, from a just like a storytelling perspective, they should have started off. I like the introduction of the Covenant here, that they're scary. I just wish that they used not. I do too. I just wish they hadn't used the elites right away. I wish they had kind of saved them for or like another maybe dramatic big reveal. Maybe a handful of elites. Like one or two. Like commanding a unit of grunts and jackals. Like maybe like 2 blue ones and 1 red or gold one. Yeah, one major and 2 regulars. That would have been what I preferred, but like. Also, I don't know if I like the way they look. I was about to go into that. I was gonna nitpick the design. They're much bigger and bulkier and musclier, and they remind me of the elites from like Halo 4. Halo 4 and 5, yeah. Well, mostly 4. That's a good point, and it's something I had noticed, because I remember when the trailer first dropped, we see them moving like from a distance with a blur effect, and our first thought, we texted about it, was like, they look like brutes. because brutes are the biggest ones besides hunters, obviously. But like the brutes are like bulky and like kind of more clumsy in their movements. So the elites are usually like quite lean and very agile. These one, I kind of get why they're doing it, because they want to exemplify this threat is like larger and more vicious than we can comprehend. Because like they're very broad, but they still move pretty quick. Mm-hmm. They don't lose their speed, because in Halo 4, one of the big complaints is the elites are slow and dumb. I don't think that was a problem. I just think their design's very different. It took some getting used to. Their armor's a little weird.
Their armor, I don't know that I like the armor, but that might just be the armor that we see on these particular guys in the pilot. Maybe later episodes will have different armor elites.
Well, I was a little bummed that they weren't as colorful, because there is visible color. Like there's still that general like muted blue, and the ones in charge have like a muted red. But like one of the fun things about Halo, the Halo enemy design, is that their color palette is so bold.
Right.
Like
they're very shiny.
Red. And like
shiny golden armor and
like elite zealots who are like warlords and admirals, they deck themselves out in gold armor because they're so like extravagant and self-indulgent. And that's really a fun detail that they kind of skimp on for this show. Mm-hmm. Or this pilot, I should say, at least. But anyway,
but I do really I enjoy the introduction of the Spartans, because I like that we get it from the insurrectionist point of view.
Yeah, I love the insurrectionist POV because it's so grounded.
Yeah, and it makes for that nice moment where, I mean, we know, but like for someone who's just tuning into the series and Master Chief starts charging, they don't necessarily know that he's going to go after the elite.
We don't know. Yeah, they don't. I mean, the Master Chief is probably one of the more recognizable video game heroes, right? Like pop culture knows who he is by looking at him generally, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I mean, your grandpa will probably point out that he's basically just the Doom guy, but
yeah, and that's not a secret. That's but I liked the introduction of the Chief a lot, where like there's, all looks lost, and there's a pause in the music, and there's a condor flying overhead, and there's just a little speck in the air that's just rapidly headed toward the ground, and you know who it is, but it's the minute he drops, it's like boom, and he looks like the Chief, and he moves quick, and like he's using an assault rifle, which is the least realistic thing in the show, is that he immediately vaults over I like the detail where the rebel leader thought the Chief was coming at him, and he was like raising his rifle to attack, and the Chief just vaults right over him to like engage all these elites. The show's action is pretty good for a pilot.
It's pretty good. I thought the movement of Chief in general was pretty well done.
Yeah, well, because it's easy to make him look rubbery if he's CGI, and if it's all practical, it's got to be awkward for Pablo Schreiber to move in that thing.
But he's got the nice, like, even when he's running at full volume, he's got this nice weight to him.
Yeah, he doesn't feel bouncy. Like when he's running, it's like. He's fast, but he's big.
My favorite movement-related thing, though, is much later in the episode, is when he comes into the part of ship where is it Quan? Is that her name?
Yeah.
Where Quan's being held, and he just like boom, boom,
like stalks past her,
just like powerhouses through her, just like kind of just like he just walks, and it's just like, you will move out of my way. Yeah,
no, it's not even you will move out of my way. It's I'm going to the other side of the room. Whether you are in the way or not is not really my problem. Yeah, okay, let's talk about Pablo Schreiber for a sec.
He's great. He's great.
He's kind of stellar. He's kind of the standout, because number one, I followed this show for a while, and I followed him when I found out he was cast as Chief. He's like, I'm pretty sure he's a legit like deep cut fan of Halo, and like it's not everything, but it's like it's helpful that he's like 6'7", like he's a big guy, and he he really knows how to play the Chief without using a lot of inflection or, till the end, spoilers, mostly without his face. He knows there's a lot he does with his little head movements, and there's going to be a million comparisons to the Mandalorian. I actually think the Chief is more expressive than the Mandalorian is, because the Chief moves his head a lot, because he's like he's a tactical leader, where like the Mandalorian's just kind of a wandering like gunslinger kind of guy, so he looks around more lazily. Like when you watch the Mandalorian, his head, you don't think so? I think the Mandalorian's head movements are a lot more calm and steady, where the Chief kind of like snaps his head from side. Like nothing the Chief does is lazy. it might be deliberate, but it's never laid back.
That's fair. I think Mando inheriting the slow movement, that's both just something that within Star Wars is kind of a nod back to his origin of like Boba Fett, but also just I feel like that's kind of like a Western move.
That's what. Yeah, he's a gunslinger. He's not a soldier, and the Chief is like a capital S soldier. Like so everything the Chief does is, even when he's moving slowly, like on the Condor, he's very purposeful.
Oh, something else that really stood out with the opening is just we need to talk about the gore.
Oh my God, that really, okay.
I wasn't expecting that.
It kind of hooked me because it's like, oh my, it's so brutal and sudden.
Yeah, I mean, there's the first couple victims of the Covenant in the show.
They're just like some teens doing drugs in the woods.
This poor like young woman gets her head just blown off.
And like in the games, when someone gets shot with a plasma weapon, it's like a burn, and obviously it fades because it's a game. But like it's a burn, it's like a heat damage. In this, it's just they're just not there anymore.
I mean, it was horrible, but it was great that the blonde woman who got like her leg blown off, and so that knocked her down to the ground. She just immediately got burst into nothing.
It blew her leg off, and she fell. And then like the elite, we don't see the elite, but it just shot her again.
She didn't even have time to react to her leg getting blown off.
No, and like it's not like a lightsaber where if you cut your arm off, it's already cauterized. They're just bloody holes in your body, and they're about to like a beach ball. It's brutal. And it was a really effective opening because it sells you on the unstoppable terror that the Covenant bring, and how like pathetically outclassed we are without the Spartans.
That is maybe a point to why it's good that they used elites, because you can have those moments where they're just walking towards characters and the characters will be just firing guns continuously, and they're just they're just bouncing off the shields. Elites have these energy shields that largely protect them from bullets and
mostly kinetic weaponry. Yeah,
like
a plasma weapon can overload the shield, but I don't think normal. I mean, they can eventually, but normal like bullet like kinetic weapons that we have, they're kind of pathetic against elite shields.
And the vast majority of the Covenant weapons are plasma based.
And also to your point, I think it also might be smarter that they use the elites, because if our first interaction with the Spartans was them just kind of walking around the battlefield popping grunts' heads off, they might look kind of like bullies. Yay! You know what I mean? Like, like the fucking happy birthday skull turned on when you headshot a grunt. There's just a burst of confetti. Like, I can kind of see why they might do that, because whenever you fight grunts in the game, it's just fun. It's just, you're having a good time just beating on these little guys.
It's true, but do we know for sure? I think we saw a jackal in the trailer or something.
They're in there, yeah. The grunts and the jackals are in or at least jackals are in the trailer.
So
they'll be there at some point.
I had that thought during this episode of, oh no, what if the Covenant is just province elites? Yeah,
that would have been really lame. Oh, you know what? Maybe I think there might be an in-universe reason why. This was a recovery mission. Maybe they only trust that to an elite, a group of elites, because they do that that's canon in Halo Reach, where when searching for Forerunner artifacts, who are like an ancient precursor civilization that the Covenant worship as gods, when they're recovering their lost artifacts, they send like strike units of elites to like go in quickly. So maybe that's what this was, because like the elites were going to recover this thing, and then they got discovered by some humans. They're like, well, we got to clean this up.
Patrick, we're supposed to be finding flaws with this show and hating on it. This is the internet.
Fuck, you're right. All right, yeah, I'll get into some things I didn't like, because we've actually been kind of kind to it so far.
I mostly really enjoyed the show overall. I do have criticisms, but my overall note is that was pretty good.
I'm a little bit there too. I think it was a little bit awkward, but what pilot isn't? It's like it's a little herky-jerky with some of the pacing, and the stuff that I thought was the weakest was every time we cut back to Reach. Because I don't think it was shot all that impressively, and the UNSC sets looked a little bit on the cheaper side.
I noticed that they're just boring.
That's like in the game. So in the Halo games, stylistically borrow a lot from like Aliens, most prominently, like the UNSC stuff. It's built like the second, like specifically Aliens, the second movie, where everything is like this really grungy, greasy, industrial military look, where everything's like kind of grid floors and iron bulkheads and lots of like little, like very human-looking tech. But in this show, all the rooms in the Reach military base are like these completely empty, vacuous like caverns with all this smooth architecture. That's like, it doesn't look military to me. Because when I think of military, I think of like hard angles and rigid like infrastructure, and like there's no wasted space on a military base.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? It's all about efficiency.
They do later have that shot of all of the Marines running down what looks like a college campus tour or something.
When the Marines are in the hangar, I'm more on board, because that looks like, and it doesn't just look like Halo, it looks like a military base where like there's no wasted space and stuff's happening. But a lot of times, it's like, oh, they probably shot this on like a college near the studio. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I got like
a fan of the Reach stuff.
Reach, what'd you think of that opening shot of Reach where we got
Sorry, I interrupted you. You said you got vibes of what?
I got vibes of like and I have not really engaged these shows fully yet on my own, so this is kind of just what I picked up from random clips and whatnot, but the newer Star Trek shows like Picard,
I was about to bring up exactly that, where like the interiors in Reach look like Star Trek Discovery, from people's outfits to the architecture. And I can't really, I've watched a couple episodes of Discovery. It's not super my thing, but I can see that, and that's also antithetical to Halo, because Halo is like the least like using logic and reason and empathy and compassion. Halo is very military, and like Starfleet is not the military.
Man, we let those dumb bugs out to the middle of nowhere to keep them from getting their filthy claws on Earth. But we stumbled onto something that's so hot for that they're scrambling over each other to get it. Well, I don't care if it's God's own anti-son of a bitch machine or a giant hula hoop. We're not gonna let them have it. What we will let them have is a belly full of lead and a pool of their own blood to drown in. Am I right, Marines? Sir, yes, sir!
I've heard people compare this show to those kinds of movies, like those Sci-Fi Channel movies. I don't think that's remotely fair, because of there's obvious craft and effort in this show, and obvious money. Because like the thing that saves it for me is whenever we're in locations that might not look very good, the camera's always moving. And the camera's like giving you a vista, you know what I mean? And that's what I appreciate. It's not just like stock TV framing where it's just flat, boring lighting and the camera's just locked off. It's a sense of movement that I appreciate.
Listen, I give them tremendous credit for making the Spartans look generally as good as they did. There are a couple of shots where they just sort of look a little awkward in their armor, but like that's inevitable, I think. And I think I
think that might work for the show. Like Spartans would look out of place among normal people.
Yeah, but I think it's just impressive that they look as good as they do, because the Spartans could have been awful.
And they move as good as they should. Like their movements are big and blocky, but they're supposed to be. They're big. The only time I spotted the seam a little bit was there's a shot where Silver Team are walking and it's a shot of their boots. You can see there's like a solid 2 or 3 inches on the bottom of their boots to like give them an extra bit of height. But that's it. Like they fill out their armor really well.
Do we know how many Spartans there are in this universe?
They did not say in the pilot. Canonically, Reach is still standing, so there are probably over 70, because I believe there were like most of the Spartan 2s died off in the fall of Reach, because they were there to defend Reach and they all got glassed. So I think at the moment it doesn't see, they're a propaganda piece, so there's not just the Master Chief, because we've got Silver Team, and later we've got Bokeem Woodbine playing one of the Spartans, or an ex-Spartan. So I've heard Soren 066. Who was one of the only canon characters that they brought aboard.
Right, he's in just one. I haven't read the book that he's part of, but I know
he's apparently he's an ex-Spartan. He like didn't gel well with the augmentation process or something. But the stuff on Reach, the outside of Reach, I didn't mind. You asked me that a little while ago. It looks like sort of a generic, just futuristic city, but that's okay. That's all it needs to be.
Yeah, I don't remember it. I remember the Halo Reach game having a very distinct look, but I don't remember the city of Reach or whatever it was named.
Oh, Arcadia. There was a city called No, it's not Arcadia.
No, Arcadia was a different planet.
That was in Halo Wars. Hold on.
Yeah. I don't remember what the city in Reach was called, but it didn't have necessarily a very distinctive look. It just was kind
it
of
just looks
city.
like a white panel, like future city.
Yeah, a little more industrial, but
a little more industrial, and like the cities in the Halo games are always like, they're futuristic, but they're sort of like retro futurism.
Mm-hmm.
Where it's not like
it's kind of like a 80s.
It's
early
like a
2000s sci-fi.
Like ODST very much looks like a Blade Runner type city, where like there aren't like holograms. There's like glass that is hollow projected stuff on it. You know what I mean? It's very like tactile and kind of flat, and everything's very like dark metallic.
Yeah.
Which Reach in the show isn't really. It's more like a stereotypical like Crystal Spire science fiction city, but that's not a deal breaker.
Yeah, it's not. But there is a little part of me that what do you call those kind of old text-based computers? Is that analog or
IBM? No, it's
they have. It's like what they have in the Aliens movies.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. It's
there's a name for
dot matrix.
Maybe it's. I kind of wish the show had a little bit more of that look, because that's how
that's very influenced by like Blade Runner and Aliens. By the way, that city is New Alexandria.
Okay,
that's the one in Reach.
Oh, right, yes. So, should we get into? Let's get into our other characters that aren't Master Chief. We got Halsey. We've got Miranda Keyes. We've got Jacob Keyes,
Admiral Parangoski,
and
Quan.
We've already mentioned Quan.
So the rest of Silver Team, who are not that fleshed out in the pilot, but they don't have to be. This is the showcase for the Master Chief in the
They
first episode.
are not Fred, not Linda,
Fred, not Linda, not Kelly.
Which
I appreciate that this is its own continuity, and they're vocal about that. They're like, we're not trying to recreate the games. We're trying
as silly as this is. No, as silly as this is, though, I appreciate that they didn't call them Blue Team.
Yep.
Like they did leave that. Not that they ever will do this, and not that it ever actually really matters. But they did leave this little sliver in there of like
that Blue Team might show up.
Maybe Blue Team's out there somewhere. They're just on a different mission.
Yeah, I mean, come on.
They're not, but I'm just saying.
What I'm curious about is like, did they change the names of the Blue? Because they're all the typical Blue Team roles, except for Fred, and I think Kai is his name. Where like in the team itself, he looks like the heavy hitter. Like he looks like he's maybe bigger than the Master Chief. Mm-hmm. Whereas in the other source material, Fred is actually like the most close to normal looking of the Spartans, where he's like shorter than the Chief and like this and that. But I'm wondering if like, and this is a somewhat of an elephant in the room among idiots on the internet. The show had taken some liberties with the casting. You know what I mean? And I have absolutely no issue with that. I think that's totally fine.
We're talking about race now. Is this that segment of
I think we're about to get there, Eric. It was going to be there sooner or later, because like in the games, everybody's white except Sergeant Johnson, who's not in this episode. I heard he's in the show, but he didn't show up in this.
He wouldn't show up for a while if they were actually following the book logic.
That's a good point, actually. Anyway, so in the games, Jacob and Miranda Keyes are both white. In this show, it seems that Jacob Keyes is black. Dr. Halsey is Miranda Keyes' mom, which is canon. That's not something they invented for the show. And so Miranda herself is of mixed race. That seems perfectly logical. And then the Silver Team Spartans, I believe 2 of them are played by POC actors. And this is the most cynical part of me, is wondering, like, did they change their names because Fred, Linda, and Kelly are 3 of the whitest names that have ever been written?
They are very, very
those are like WHHH white names.
It's like you need that and another Spartan named like I don't know, Augustus or Gabriel
Meredith. Yeah. So part of me briefly wondered about that, but then I was like, maybe not, whatever.
I don't know.
I'm not hung up on any of that kind of nonsense. And like people have dumb people have accused this show of being quote woke. First of all, it's Halo.
Stay with the Master Chief. He'll know what to do.
Yes, sir, Sergeant.
Thanks for the tank. He never gets me anything. Oh, I know what the ladies like.
What are they gonna? Do you think this show is going to be about a social injustice of 2022 when there's a genocidal alien war going on? I don't think it's going to be, because people have made that complaint about like the new especially Star Trek Picard, where it's like very much not that it's quote woke, which is not a real criticism, just that it's like a transparent and kind of heavy-handed critique of modern political institutions rather than just being set in the future. I don't think that's remotely a danger for this show, because Halo has never been about politics, and I don't think they're ever going to do anything besides maybe lightly touch on it, if anything at all.
The only thing with casting that kind of is a very minor nitpick in the grand scheme probably, but I do wish that they had aged up Halsey a bit.
She looks a bit younger, yeah.
Yeah, like her and Miranda look a little too close in age.
Yeah, I mean, I'm assuming that the actress who plays Halsey is in her 40s?
Maybe, but she's a good-looking lady.
No, she's beautiful, but that might be the problem.
Yeah,
because like Halsey has like gray hair and like, very aged by the war.
I wish she looked a little unkept, and I wish she had a little gray in the hair. And
because Catherine Halsey doesn't give a shit what she looks like.
Right. And maybe like, she'll kind of get there over the course of the show.
Well, because what the books don't go into until way later is that Catherine Halsey is one of the coldest motherfuckers to ever live. And she's like a complete psychopath beneath her like calm exterior. She has like no value for human life, and she has no value for people's freedoms. She's just about ensuring her goals are accomplished, which usually, luckily, are about the preservation of humanity, so she gets a pass. So I thought it was like I don't know, they're playing with the idea of her being that way in the show, but they're like,
she's still doing devious things. Like she gives the Spartans separate orders kind of behind others' backs, and like
but it was to protect John. I think they're still trying to get you to like her a little bit. I mean,
she's still Halsey. I just wish she was a little more Halsey.
Yeah, like they haven't made her a hero by any stretch. She's still very much like the Nick Fury of the outfit. She's the one who will make hard decisions regardless of whoever says what. The one person I was very surprised, Jacob Keyes made some hard calls in this episode.
Well, actually, the point I wanted to get to was just that one of the reasons I wish that they'd aged her up a bit is that it changes the relationship a bit between her and Keyes. Yeah, because like in the books,
let me see what their age gap is.
Right, and the books, I definitely got the impression that Halsey was older, and she was just kind of like. Yeah, and she was just kind of like, hey, Keyes, while we're, on this mission, recruiting kids from my secret project.
From a secret eugenics experiment.
We got some time to kill, and Keyes is just kind of like, I'm a young man in the military, so obviously I'm going to
I'll do what you say, ma'am.
Yeah, I will do with anything for someone who wants to sleep with me.
Yeah, the power dynamic between the two of them is, well, they don't share a scene in the episode until the end when they're all in a group. But like in the books, it seems as though their union was not very amicable. They don't seem like in the lore. They do not. First of all, because Catherine Halsey doesn't really love anyone except maybe the Spartans later on. Like
I think she was just like, I need child.
I need relief.
Come here.
I need relief, or like I need to blow off some steam. Here, come here. And I think like you say, Keyes was like, well, I better do what she says. She is a doctor.
Yeah.
Let me look up the actors here. Because Keyes in the game, he's a military man to the core. Like he's a very like standard but effective like mentor with integrity kind of guy. I'm just confused why he's in this pilot at all, because he's on Reach. Shouldn't he be on his ship?
Right. He's here making sort of seeming calls that seem sort of above his station.
That's what I mean. He's like a captain, which means you're in command of like one warship. He seems to be making like Secretary of Defense level calls, or like someone within.
Where's Lord Hood?
Exactly. Where is Terrence Hood?
Where is I mean,
Saren Osman. Where is all these Danforth Witchcomb? Like all these people that are involved. Where's Oni? Where the fuck is Oni?
Listen, I'm okay with adaptations. I'm okay with them changing actors and like switching them up or switching characters in and out. But here's the thing, Microsoft, if you want to get the show right, 343, you gotta listen to me here, okay? You gotta get Ron Perlman back as Lord Hood.
And he'll do it in a heartbeat.
It's the only way.
I will look. If Terrence Hood never shows up in the show, I'll be pissed, but I'll stick around. If he shows up in the show and it's not Ron Perlman, I may jump ship. I may straight up just cancel my subscription.
I will cancel my subscription right then and there if someone besides Ron Perlman shows up.
It's better if he doesn't show up at all if it's not Ron Perlman.
Yeah.
But
I just wanted to get that out there.
Yeah, I looked it up, by the way. Those two actors, only 1 year apart, and Catherine Halsey's a year older.
Oh, okay. Well,
I guess she just that goes to your point. Like they should have aged her up a little bit in some other way. Because good for her for looking that well. Good for her for looking like that at 52. But like, give her some gray. The
other funny age thing was when Miranda and Quan were talking on the ship. At one point, Miranda just very dismissively goes, "You're a teenager," to which I responded like, "First of all, it's like, and how old are you? You look like you're like 23. You like
she is the actress who plays Keys. I actually think did quite a good job. I don't know if I think her subplot was a little bit weaker written, but she has a very young face. And I think that actress is in her like mid to late 20s or maybe early 30s, but she has very young features.
Hey, listen, I suffer from the same thing. So I know what it's like.
That's why I have this. Yeah.
Like no one ever believes that I am the age I am, but
yeah. But the actress who plays Keys, or Miranda Keys, I should say. First of all, she has this subplot where when the Master Chief takes this insurrection girl survivor with her, she refuses to bend to UNSC propaganda that the Spartans saved my life. So the UNSC's immediate recourse is to have her killed. Again, this seems like something Oni would do.
I liked it though. It's so cold.
It's something they would do in the books, not in the games.
No, the games always manage to avoid all of that. Like in the game,
complication, yeah.
In the games, humanity is just we're on the brink of death. Master Chief's gonna save us. Humanity's got band together. Yeah, we're good.
In the expanded material, Oni is like fucking savages. Like. They're like the worst aspects of the CIA with unlimited funding because humanity's in danger, and like you're right. I liked that was their immediate recourse, but I thought it was strange that wasn't a directive from Oni. Maybe it would take too much time to introduce what Oni is, but like I thought it was weird that order first of all came through Captain Keyes. That really doesn't seem like his responsibility,
right?
And it went to Miranda Keyes. This doesn't. They're in the Navy.
Well, no, the order didn't come from Captain Keyes. He just knew about the order.
Well, it came through him, and he gave it to her because he said, "I wanted you to hear it from me."
Okay, yeah, sure.
So, but like, then why wouldn't Admiral Parangosky just do this immediately herself? You know what I mean? It's like they feel the need to delegate it to Keyes, Jacob, and Miranda, and then like. Okay, so here's what I want to get into. This is one of my only larger criticisms with this episode. Is that
I think we should praise the male actor and criticize the women a little bit more.
Dan, you're right. But yeah, I think that one of my only bigger criticisms with this episode is that, like, yes, the UNSC is very ethically compromised, and they would make really cold decisions like that. I think it's a lot to pack that revelation into the pilot. Do you know what I mean? It almost felt like this was a mid-season episode.
You know what this felt like? In some ways, it felt like a summarization of the first 3 episodes of The Mandalorian.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
In the first episode, it's all about Mando getting to Grogu. Spoilers for Mandalorian.
Yeah, Grogu's not even in it to the last 10 seconds.
And then the second episode is just them getting back to the ship. And then the third episode is them going back to the planet, and then Mando.
He gives him back and has a change of heart.
Yeah, that, and then all of that got condensed for this pilot into
1 hour. Which, okay, because I have the opposite problem with The Mandalorian. I think The Mandalorian takes too much time dicking around. I think there's not enough overall story in The Mandalorian to fit its episode order, so they have to fill it with all this other stuff and take all this time going from point A to point B. It's the opposite for this pilot. I feel like this pilot is, as you say, it's like 2 stories that like probably should have more time to breathe, but all the air's been sucked out. They've been like compressed. You know what I mean? Because like I thought I like the idea of pairing Master Chief and Quan. I think they're a fun duo because they're so opposite, of course. And I like pairing the Master Chief with one human. They do that even in Halo Infinite with the pilot. Because that's a really effective thing. It's like you pair, it's like same thing with Dredd, or to an extent Mad Max Fury Road, where you pair this like stoic badass who doesn't say much with like a younger, more optimistic, or more of a spark plug other character.
Right.
And I appreciated that. I liked that dynamic. I just think it went really, really quickly. And the Master Chief rebels against the UNSC in the first episode. That felt a little rushed, in my opinion.
Yeah, it was odd, especially since I'm assuming in this universe, the Spartans were originally created to quell human insurrectionists.
Yeah,
and
just
then,
like in the books.
And then the Covenant just showed up.
Yeah, and the Covenant showing up is like, basically the UNSC is like, we weirdly have the perfect thing for this.
Do you think it was maybe a mistake for them starting where they did in the timeline? Do you think maybe they should have gone further back to start with, like, they don't know about the Covenant yet, and then we as the audience learn about the Covenant with them?
Yes and no, because on the one hand, if they wanted to start their story more chronologically, maybe it would have made sense to go all the way back to like the Battle of Harvest in 2525 or somewhere around there. Because starting in 2552 is like, it just makes it, once again, makes it seem like this year is the most jam-packed year in the history of time. Because fucking everything in the Halo universe happened in 2552 for about 5 or 6 years. So I thought, yes, in some capacity, but also like, then you're 28 years out from even stepping on a Halo ring.
Presumably in that version, they would have to do like flash forwards and stuff.
Maybe time skips, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, if they were doing, I think, yeah, time skip thing might be best. Like early seasons of Arrow, or what Book of Boba Fett tried to do with the dueling narratives. And then, you know, that show did it fine. I'm being a little harsh. I think that would have been preferable, because one of the only bigger issues I had with this episode is that it felt like it was playing 25% too fast. Because we go from the Covenant to suddenly we're just locked into this internal UNSC ethical dilemma. And I'm not mad at the idea of the ethical dilemma, because I like seeing the Master Chief in that environment. Because the Chief is such a problem solver that when he's encountering a problem, he thinks so quickly, and he's like, okay, we'll do this, this, and this. I know that this works and that works. Like when he's he cuts the camera feed, so the UNSC tries to remotely disable the oxygen on the Condor to knock him out but suffocate her. And the Chief is like on the ground. He should be unconscious, but then he just wakes himself up because he's the goddamn Master Chief, and he like breaks into the floor panel to manually restart the oxygen. That was really cool. That's the Master Chief. He's figuring it out. It's a little techier than I expected him to be. I assume he knows how Pelicans and Condors work, I guess.
Yeah. He probably studied the manual over and over again, but I would think that's usually more Cortana's department.
Because Cortana is not yet in the show. We've seen her in the trailer. So
we know she's coming. We got a name drop of her. We got a setup. I think that, so is it safe to presume we got that shot of Halsey? She's got what looks like a clone or something in a pod.
So they say cloning is like, they say no AIs, no cloning. I guess they're negating the usual lore that most ships are run by an AI, a limited AI.
Well, there are AIs of some type.
Have we seen them? Have they shown up yet?
I don't think we've seen them physically, but we've heard them. I thought the AIs have spoken on the ship and just said stuff like landing sequence engaged and things like that.
Yeah, then you're probably right. Yeah.
I think we have dumb AIs on that level, but I don't know if smart AIs necessarily exist.
Yeah, because they seem to be cagey about the idea of, they say like no smart AIs and no cloning. They tell Halsey that to her face.
Right. But I assume
I don't know what
that thing we saw in the pod was a clone.
A flash clone.
Was eventually become Cortana, yeah.
Yeah, or because for anyone who's made it this far into this episode and doesn't know, Cortana is just a recreation of Catherine Halsey's brain, or part of it. That's why they share a similar voice and similar personality. But in the Halo lore, Flash clones are a thing. Like, humanity has them already. That's how they kidnapped all the kids for the Spartan 2 program. But the Flash clones, the thing is that they die quickly. Like, they don't last very long, which I guess makes sense. It's really brushed over in the books, which, I mean, whatever. It's a plot point that they just need to get past. So I'm not sure what they're going at with the cloning subplot. I really hope that doesn't become like a main plot, is like a cloning arc.
My assumption was just that was what will eventually become Cortana.
That's my hope, yeah. Because Cortana we know she's coming, and she was actually foreshadowed quite a bit in this episode. They almost make it ominous when they talk about Cortana. Maybe they wrote this at the time of Halo 5, when she would eventually become a villain or whatever. I still hate that. But yeah, so she's not here, and so because she's not here, Chief had to be more of an intuitive problem solver himself. And this is going to sound really weird. I actually kind of think this episode gives more characterization to the Master Chief than like Halo 1, 2, and 3 did.
Well, Bungie was always adamant about keeping Master Chief fairly blank slate.
Tabula rasa. He is the player, yeah.
Yeah, and so you, as the player, just read yourself into that situation.
Yeah, you get to be the badass that all the Covenant are afraid of.
Mm-hmm. So I think that's fair, that the show definitely gives him a bit more character than we're used to.
And it's not out of the purview of the Master Chief. It's like, it's stuff he would say that I could see him saying, you know what I mean? The only exception is when he and Quan are having that conversation when she's eating. There's a cute moment where she says, "You're not eating," and he just says, "Didn't see anything I liked." That's funny. That's the Master Chief might say that. But then she says, "What do you like?" And he's like, "Nuts, bolts." That was a joke. I know. That was a little like, the Master Chief would never say that was a joke. He doesn't explain like that. So that was a little bit of nothing. But then, like, the only thing that really fucked me up in that scene is, like, Master Chief's just giving classified information up to this insurrectionist.
Yeah.
He's just candidly talking about an assassination he pulled off. That does not, like, that was the one time in this episode I thought it felt out of character. Because, like, the Master Chief wouldn't be talking this much, and he certainly wouldn't be giving away secrets.
He's a little too quick to question his orders for someone who's a brainwashed child super soldier.
Exactly. He's a child soldier. He should, like, that's why I think, again, his rebellion against the UNSC should have been mid-season.
Probably.
I think you should, like, have the UNSC be this established force of, quote, good for the first few episodes and slowly introduce all their moral compromises. I think that'd be a more effective way to, like, show the Master Chief turn on them, because that's why I think this feels so rushed, is because they really speed run through ethical dilemma and rebellion.
Something I'm surprised that something we kind of skipped over. We got to talk about the appearance of High Charity and the Covenant.
Dude,
and
they just cut to High Charity.
It looked great.
It looked really great. I was surprised they just cut to it like a normal, because even in the Halo games, we never get Covenant scenes unless we're with a POV character like the Arbiter. We never just cut to them. That doesn't really happen. And they just cut to, they cut to High Charity, and they cut to, I think in the subtitles she's called the Blessed One. She's a human woman who is in High Charity within the power cast of the Covenant.
Right. And Mercy has gone, Prophet Mercy has gone to talk to her.
That really surprised me, is like in the first, like, that's just the High Prophet of Mercy. Like, he's one of the 3 leaders of the Covenant, and he's just like, we get him in the first episode. It was really surprised by that, and I was almost kind of shocked at how this human talked to the Prophet of Mercy, where they were almost on peer level, and I thought that was really weird. But I think for fans of the series, I think you can kind of intuit why. The Covenant know that they can't activate Forerunner technology. but humans can for some reason. So they've found one human that they've raised to be their key, basically, to like open shit for them, for the Forerunner shit. And like they have to play nice with her, otherwise, you know what I mean? Like they have to
I do hope though that there is a scene maybe where we see the prophets alone and Truth is kind of like, all right, but we all know the moment
rolling their eyes like, ugh.
Well, like the moment we activate the Halo rings, we're discarding this one because.
Yeah. Well, what I want to see? I want to see either that or like I would like it if like Mercy was the intermediary who talked to the human. Do you know what I mean? Because he's like he's the religious one. He's like the more kind of sage wise one, and I would love a scene where like if she sees all three hierarchs, if she's like feeling herself, I just want Truth to be like, remember exactly what you are in this machine. Like remember that you are nothing compared to me. Do you know what I mean? Because the Prophet of Truth is the politician of the three. He's like the power player. And so I would love a scene where he like really like puts her down a peg. Not that I want to see that happen to a woman, obviously.
No, we've already established that we're super sexist. It's fine.
I mean, you're right. So really what should happen is her character arc is she needs a husband. Then she realizes motherhood is the only way that she can have value. No. I would love that scene to like really assert that the Prophet of Truth is like the most dangerous guy in the room. If he's like I would love a scene where they roll their eyes at her when she's out of the room, or if Truth like really like flexes that he's the one in charge. I liked seeing High Charity. I wasn't a fan that immediately after we just cut to a white room and we were there the whole scene.
That room was really boring. I mean, I appreciate
because
that
the Covenant stuff's purple, man. Make it purple.
I appreciate that they got the ship in the center, just like in the games.
Yeah, you see the Forerunner Dreadnought there.
But like, yeah, the actual design of the room, the whole time I was just thinking, man, where's David Lynch?
Yeah.
Bring some of that. Bring some of that Harkonnen Dune.
Some of that Harkonnen weirdness.
Yeah,
just a hanging cow.
Yeah, we need a little bit of that. We need like a fat guy just spinning around the top of the room.
Robin!
Oh my god, that'd be great.
Would be so fucking weird. But you know what? Like, not even David Lynch's seminal masterpiece of Dune. It's like, think about how cool High Charity is designed in Halo 2. You know what I mean? Like all the rooms in that level are so distinct and so different. Like there are levels on High Charity where there's just like grassy pavilions.
Yeah, well, this High Charity has much more of an organic look to it.
They're going with that for the Covenant. It looks like. Yeah.
It has like a kind of like a more jellyfish look to it almost.
Even the design of High Charity itself in that wide shot. You're right. It looked like a jellyfish rather than like High Charity in the games looks like a space station. It's like purple and it's rigid. But like everything seemed very like flowing and organic on the inside, which I don't hate. I just want like make it purple, you cowards. Covenant stuff is purple. So we've covered High Charity, we've covered Mercy. I like the little detail that the Blessed One had a book that presumably she had when she was a child and was abducted, and the Prophet of Mercy is like, why don't you leave that behind? Like he doesn't want human literature to be seen on High Charity. I thought that was kind of a cool little hint into how the prophets operate, where it's all about like, oh no, we don't want people seeing that. Maybe you'll read it to me someday.
I do miss. It makes sense that they're speaking, in their own Covenant language, of course.
Yeah, it makes more sense, but I miss it.
I do miss the kind of the old Grandpa Simpson voice of Mercy and
the taming of the hunters, the Grunt Rebellion.
The important thing was that I had an onion on my belt, which was the style at the time.
The other reason I think we have this human amongst the Covenant is just that we need a character who doesn't cost
millions of dollars per second.
Right. Yeah, to be the representative of the Covenant and speak to other characters and stuff.
We need a villain who can talk to characters that doesn't necessitate a whole bunch of motion capture. Yeah.
This is why we need the puppets for the grunts.
Or a puppet for a prophet.
Yeah, that could work too. A prophet could much. Prophet probably could have been a person in a lot of makeup and this.
They could You can make them a little more human looking if they wanted to. Or if anyone was going to be like a Jim Henson style puppet, the prophets already kind of look like it. They look like Skeksis from the Dark Crystal.
Yeah, that'd be great. Oh yeah.
So maybe you'd have to pay the puppeteers union rates, so maybe they want to ditch
I think
that.
Generally, if you want to not be a dick, it's good to pay your employees. I've heard
that seems to be that. I've heard that from places before. Yeah, like it's like when I just saw a still from one of the Spider-Man No Way Home. Apparently, the scene where all 3 Peter Parkers are in the science lab, that's all blue screen because they can just leave that to their post team. They don't have to pay a props department to build a set.
Brilliant.
And it doesn't affect the movie at all. It looks fine, but it's like, yeah, when you work in the industry, it's just like, that's so disheartening. And I'm sure that's not present in this show.
This has nothing to do with Halo, but my heart died a little bit when I heard that Mark Hamill, when Luke learned that Luke Skywalker was being voiced by an AI.
Oh my, yeah, exactly. Same energy. It's like, oh god. That's when it feels like assembly line machine production.
Yeah.
And that's what because I didn't get that sense specifically with this show, with this episode. I got the sense that it's like, it's like butter scraped over too much bread, to use a Lord of the Rings analogy, where like for everything that Halo needs to be, they kind of spread everything they had as much as they could. You know what I mean? And I can't fault them for that. It's a pilot for an expensive show.
Listen, I just want to say, as somebody who grew up in, throughout the early 2000s, I think it's really great that with recent releases like Halo and Detective Pikachu and Sonic the Hedgehog, video game adaptations have graduated from being really terrible to being kind of okay.
We've come quite a long way.
We've come a long way, and I
like
think
Uncharted was mediocre. Like we're getting there.
I already forgot about Uncharted.
Exactly, but you don't hate it,
so
it's a wash.
This is it, baby.